Hey, friends. We're hitting and hustling. We're hitting and hustling. Thank you for watching. Well, hold on. That's what's going on. Jamie, I started the show with it on YouTube, so I hear double in my ear.
Okay.
I was like, what is going on? All right, so everyone, hit and hustle from IronSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Craig Long. Thank you for joining in. We're going to be talking about the Game Watch rewatch notes that Jamie put out yesterday and a couple of things that I've seen. The nice thing about Jamie being on the show, and Jamie, thank you for joining me today. You are always here, so we greatly appreciate that. The nice thing about watching the game back is I know that Jamie is always going to notice the same things as me. So we don't really have to talk about it because you posted a bunch of clips today that showed a bunch of things that I noticed as well. So we're going to get into that. Jamie, it's been about, I guess this is the third day now since Notre Dame has had the best offense in college football, right? I mean, I think that's the main takeaway.
I mean, yeah.
I think that's what I took away from it. I think so if we were doing a power ranking, so I was thinking about this. It's this power ranking. So it's the 2019 LSU, right?
I was gonna say that I mean they got to be like second, and
Yeah.
then
So 19
and we're talking
LSU.
2020 Alabama,
2020 Bama with the Heismans,
Yeah.
and then Notre Dame, I think, is third now in in college football. I got to tell you, man. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there was a guy, Murph, who's on ISD, who's very active message board poster, and he got mad at Mike and I for being too Pollyanna about the offense in the game. And I think if you listen to that entire our Power Hour podcast, we gave pretty fair grades to the season.
You did. I was.
I think we were maybe even harsh.
Kind of surprised you were. So I was listening yesterday, and so the game. So you guys did the game first, and that was good, right?
And we were effusive in our praise.
You were effusive in praise, and then
we're like the season. I mean, it's true. They're 2-2.
Yeah.
They didn't. I mean, it's just like you can't just. I mean, I think it makes sense if you get like an A for one game, but you get an F in another game, you're probably going to get a C.
You're coming out for a C.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to do season grades after a game like that because it's so different.
Yeah.
You know, also, and not just that, but the personnel is different too.
Yeah, and I'm not big on 4-game grades. I like half season. Yeah, I like 4 games. I'm like, okay, well now I understand it's the bye. It makes sense. We're gonna do it for the content, but to me, it makes more sense 6 games because, they'll have another BYU in there too, right? You get another kind of mix in there and you get to kind of see the offense, how they do against, I mean, BYU doesn't have a great defense, but a better defense. And you get to kind of see how they kind of progress here. And that kind of changes your perspective. And, but yeah, it is funny because whatever. Notre Dame fans, ride high, man. Ride high. Like, enjoy the game. Tommy Rees called. I call it a brilliant game from him. I think it was a brilliant game from him, and I think that you could say just execution-wise, one of the best games Notre Dame has had in a very long time in offense. And you know what? Yes. You play a garbage defense, it's a lot easier to execute when you play a garbage defense. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But still, they played a lot of garbage defenses in the back half of last year. And yeah, they put up points and whatever. They didn't execute at the same level.
So, speaking of garbage defense, I was having flashbacks. Like, honestly, it was hard for me to watch that. I mean, it was some BVG level of ridiculousness. Like, any emotion that Tommy Rees threw at them, not just fell for it, like with both feet they fell for it. I mean, like the clip you showed on your Twitter feed. Let's see if I can bring it up here actually, because they jumped, like they motion out. I think it was Diggs or Estime.
It was Diggs on the
Diggs.
Wheel. Yeah,
it's just. And it's like they left the defensive end. Like they like usually it's like, okay, we got a linebacker out of the play. And it's like, all right, that you kind of understand that, right? You get a linebacker out of there, you know, they make the formation. Let's see if I can bring this up. And it's like usually, okay, you want to go to the motion, especially to the boundary. Then fine, whatever. But then you leave the defensive end, and now you leave them completely outnumbered to the play side.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is some stuff that we've seen with BBG over the years. Here, let's put it up. You had a GIF of it, and we'll just see it here, where you're gonna see, you know, Estime goes out, and the defensive end
In the edge widens out with him.
It's just so
And
good.
it's not even that happens because, you know, that could be because he's like technically an outside linebacker. He's going there, but who's fitting and replacing?
Yeah.
Right. And it's or like that blitz that 33 runs, like that's got to be off when he sees that motion or something, you know. There has to be some kind of adjustment to that. And they are I mean, it's just comically bad. It's comically bad.
It's so good.
Defense. Yeah.
It's just great stuff. Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, that's what Notre Dame was dealing with. But at the same time, like you do look, you have to be able to, you know, take advantage of things, right? Like here's the thing, a bad, terrible offense doesn't take advantage the way Notre Dame did on Saturday, you know?
Yeah.
And so that to me is like, look, there's a lot of things that North Carolina did that made it easier for Notre Dame, but you still gotta do this stuff. Nicholas Hendrickson, thank you for bringing it in. Winning is fun. Enjoy it. I totally agree with that. You know, I think people are very much protecting their feelings, I think, about like what to take from it. Like I got a bunch of comments about like North Carolina's defense and stuff. And that's true, but execution's execution, you know, like there's a lot of easy stuff that they had against Marshall as well that they didn't take advantage of. They were doing the wrong thing. They weren't executing correctly. Right. So, like, for example, you know, Drew Pine, right? They go play action. They hit the ball to Lorenzo Styles is open and he hits him on the post, right? The post route was there against Marshall and they didn't hit it. It's going to be a touchdown both times. So that's the difference, right? Like that's the difference between winning and losing. You know, you can beat Marshall if you execute the things that are there. They didn't in that game and they did in this game. So that's a good, you know, it's a good sign to see. Right. And you move on. So Jamie, I guess let's just kind of do a little bit big picture here in terms of like what you think this means going forward. Like, how does this change? How much did this game change your perception of the season going forward and what we're going to see for the next 8 games?
I think it changed my perception a lot just because regardless of how they won, I think they needed to win. So, cause I think if they were 1-3 heading into the bye, I think no matter how much, you know, the guys like playing for Marcus Freeman and the other all the vibes that are good, they die. Yeah. Because you're 1-3 and you know, you're going to play a good like a pretty good BYU team. It's not a great BYU team, but it's a pretty good BYU team. And there's just a lot of games, I mean, still on the schedule that are going to be tough games for Notre Dame. They're not all going to look this easy for Notre Dame. But if they had gone into it and then they still have like they're 2 games under 500 there, I just think that it changes the mindset of the guys on the team. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, there's the guys who are like, I got to make sure I'm staying healthy because I'm getting ready for the draft or whatever. It just changes with thing, even if it's like not in their regular nature to think that way. It's people start thinking that way. But now you win that game and you think about, okay, this is what we can do the rest of the season. And this is how we're building on it. And obviously the way they did it too, I think that matters because I think if they came out and they say they won it and it looked similar to that Cal game, I think the guys on offense, specifically the skill guys, are going to be they're they're not going to have a lot of confidence the
Mhm.
rest of the way. Like, it's going to be like, oh, this is what our offense is going to look like. Like, we can't do anything with Drew. We can't do whatever. But now you can see that, like, there's possibilities.
Yeah.
There's possibilities. And everybody got a piece. Everybody got touches. Everybody was able to kind of have success. And then obviously too, like on defensively too, like yes, 32 points in the one bad play at the end of the game there too, but like they played pretty well
Mhm.
against a good offense. And there's a lot to kind of like build off and have confidence there. And I think you could say that was like Maris Leofil's best game, right? Like
Yeah.
Isaiah Foskey, maybe he made more of an impact versus Cal, but that his all around game, that was his best all around game he's played all year, right? And you're just seeing a lot of positive signs from guys. And I think too, when guys start playing like, oh, now we're gonna get to start peaking and get there, and then the other guys who maybe aren't playing as great right now, like Brandon Joseph hasn't made the kind of impact you expect. Well, it kind of gives, people are going to be like, hey, what's going on with Brandon Joseph? But they're not going to be too loud about it because other guys are playing well. And that takes away some pressure from everybody. And you can just go out and win and play and let the plays come.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to get to this comment from Levi too because it's interesting. Then we'll get to the rest of that. But Notre Dame, did you notice them huddling more than compared? And he called it interesting, not surprising, in a follow up. So, and I just posted a tweet that said Notre Dame is the slowest, one of the slowest teams in college football, 129th out of 131. So, in terms of pace. What do you make of that? Do you think that's a Drew Pine thing, like trying to get everyone on the same page? Like, do you have an impression of that?
I don't know. That might have been a Pine thing. I think in this game too, I think it had a lot to do. And I posted those ones where they checked into those different runs on Twitter. And so I think a lot of that is they wanted to take their time because they wanted to come up to the line and we have our call and then maybe they have another check. So maybe they have like one already baked in. So it's like, here's play 1, here's play 2. And then, this is what you're kind of checking into if you see this. So that could have been a reason for it. And I think just part of it is dictated by the matchup. Like they were like, we think we're going to get these looks so we can check into what we want to do and get exactly the kind of looks that we're hoping for and then have success with it. So I think that probably got a lot to do with it. Obviously they ran like 80 something plays
85
in the
plays,
game.
yeah.
So it doesn't really matter, right? About like, who cares about pace if you're controlling the game that way and still running 80 plays? UNC only ran 60 and they're normally like an 80 plus kind of team. So, I don't know. I just think that tempo when things are humming and if that's what's going to give you success, like go for it, right? Just do it. But I think we kind of saw in this game that they did the offense really did well with these checks and whatever. And it wasn't too much for them to handle. It definitely wasn't too much for Pine to handle. Right. So they had a lot of success with it. So I think that's another kind of thing where you look at, this is kind of maybe more of our identity moving forward.
So you were talking about the defense before we got to that comment, and it's like a tradition now where Notre Dame loses guys like key players when they go up against North Carolina, right? So in 2020, Kyle Hamilton goes out with the targeting call like right before the first half, and it's like at the time we thought, oh, that's not good, right? You lose Kyle Hamilton against this high-powered offense, like that's going to be a big problem. And then Notre Dame handled it. And then in 2021, obviously he doesn't play in that game because he got hurt. And then in this game, Ramon Henderson goes out before the game, and then DJ Brown gets hurt in the first half, and he doesn't play the rest of the game. So it's just kind of interesting. I think we kind of gloss over the fact that they didn't have two of their top safeties in this game. Which leads to, I think, an explosive at the end with Hart and Bracey, because I think Cam Hart's gotten a lot of grief for that play. And to be clear, he did make a mistake. He has to sink on that. He can't just sit there. But even in sinking, he's going to be in a trail position, right?
Yeah.
Bracey's in a 2 cover, and he's got his back to the sideline, which that's never do that, right? Like that can't ever be the case, right? You always have to have eyes on number one. And when I say number one, you count from the outside. So 1, and then slot is 2, and then tight end would be 3, something like that. So you always have to have eyes on 1 if you're in 2 cover. So that's a mistake by Bracey there. So I think that's kind of part of why that play happened, right? You don't have your normal safeties in the game. They don't know that they're supposed to be, Bracey doesn't have the best, he's not played. I don't think I've ever seen him play safety before. So, I think that played a big part of it. And that just kind of goes to show like how well they did in the back. Even though, they gave up a couple explosives there, 36% success rate for North Carolina on the game. Notre Dame was at 60%, right? So like when you look at the score 45-32, it's like, is that indicative? Like, no, like Notre Dame completely dominated them in this game, offense and defense. I've lost Jamie, so we will wait for him to come back, and I'll get to this comment from Savage Seon Fitness. What do you guys think about Golden being in the conversation for the Georgia Tech head coach job? I don't think he is in the conversation, right? So something that I've noticed over the last, I guess, couple weeks here is something I've noticed over the last couple weeks. There's Jamie. He's back. So I was just talking about this. Yeah, no problem. I was just commenting on the fact that it's we've seen Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator for USC, the 3 jobs that have come open. So I guess it's Nebraska, Arizona State, and now Georgia Tech. Alex Grinch has been mentioned in all of those. I don't think he's a head coach candidate for any of those positions. And so I don't think Al Golden is a real serious contender for the Georgia Tech job right now. I think his name was just mentioned. Maybe his agent threw it out there.
A lot of agent talk.
Yeah. So I don't see him as being like a big factor in that at the moment. Because while I think Notre Dame's doing well defensively, I don't think they're like lighting the world on fire that someone's like, who we need to go get is Al Golden, So I think they need to play a little bit better.
Yeah. I do think though that for kind of what Georgia Tech is, I think it kind of makes sense to get a guy who has a similar kind of track record as Golden, who kind of rebuilt Temple from nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So, because that is a big rebuilding job, and Collins made it worse somehow in the transition from Paul Johnson. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like whatever Matt threw in the Dion I think, I don't know if that is also too, is that Dion just getting his name out there, whatever? Is it because he was played for the Falcons, whatever? I really have no idea if Deion Sanders is a really good football coach or not, or how much is hype and how much is not. I think I mean, obviously he knows the game. He's a smart player. He was a very intelligent football player. And I don't think he's a dummy or anything like that. Although if you listen to him commentate and analyze stuff on TV, he was a dummy on that. I mean, he said a lot of stupid stuff, but whatever, that's personality or whatever. It's different than actually being a coach. And I think he can recruit obviously too, but I don't know. I don't know who's best for that Georgia Tech job, to be honest. What I would probably do is I think getting a guy like Chadwell, Jamie Chadwell would be a guy who's got proven track record of success, that could come in, bring in a system that you think that's a little different and but also successful. Someone like that, I think would make sense, but I don't know.
I wouldn't go the DC route, right? That's not what I would do.
Especially after Collins, yeah.
Right. Usually you go the other way. Usually it's okay, you go from one end to the other end. If you want to attract players, you need to do it by offense, right? I just think that's the way it's got to go. What's up, guys? So Jamie, another thing that I noticed in your rewatch notes that shocked me is Notre Dame only ran 6 plays out of 21 on Saturday.
Felt
And
like more.
you would you would think so, because all of those plays were good plays.
They were
So
like all great plays.
that's like
Yeah.
20 yards per play.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? I guess like the other part too is Notre Dame hit on the six plays so well that
one was
in
like
this,
a 2-yard gain or something, but
right,
then all the other ones were big plays.
and in the second half, then it was like, okay, we're up big, let's just pound them, right? So you pound them with Eli Raridan and Holden Stace and those guys, which I thought those guys were really good, really good. I mean, that's they really have something with those two, because I think you mentioned Holden Stace, like he's very athletic, like he's a lot more athletic than we thought. We know Eli Raridan is like a very big athletic player. That's that situation. I feel like, I don't want to say it's going to it's not going to, like, once Michael Mayer leaves, I think there's going to be a dip, but I don't think it's going to be a dip in the way that it could be in another situation where you kind of lose, like someone who you consider to be a first round pick at tight end. I mean, those guys, I feel like they have a really bright future. But so it just goes to show, like they hit the plays in 21. And I think they were able to lean on the running game in the second half a lot more because of that. But do you think, 6 plays, that's not that many. Like, do you feel like they need to have more than that?
I think they cut it off at the right time. Like how I think what you kind of like, because you don't want to show too much out of it. You don't, because you want to save that for so now basically what they did off of that too is like UNC saw what they did against Cal, and they kind of like shifted off of that. And then now BYU is going to see what they've done there. And now they can kind of build off of that and say, like, you have to defend all of these things. And I can guarantee you, BYU is going to have somebody running with that wheel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A linebacker or safety is going to be running with that wheel. So, and then it's what can you do to build off of that, right? And obviously they did, like that similar type of, that other one that I that we posted where the guy widened out or whatever. How can they do different things in the running game with it? And that's how I think, you're going to look at it, and then they're going to do more stuff. I think where they motion that guy out, and what they did with Kyron last year. Cause if you look at how they used 21 last year, a lot of it was Kyron getting out into the slot and then featuring him there. Right. So are you going to do some of that with Diggs and Tyree? Right. Are you going to do some more of that there? Are you going to kind of run that little like crossbuck action that they had some success with last year as well? Right. Like, I think there's a lot they can do there. And I mean, there's a lot they can kind of like borrow from, I mean, it's a little bit, it's a different than what they've showed, but like some of the stuff that like, Coastal does with their 21 stuff, right?
Yeah.
21, like, and what can you do there? So, I think the normal reaction is to say like only 6 plays, like what, like why weren't they in it like in 20 plays or whatever? But I do think that it's like having it like there and using it in the way they use it, is kind of perfect. Although I was shocked, and I was thinking about, because that first wheel to Diggs was the first play of the second quarter. They hadn't run it in the first quarter. So, but that might have been like Reese kind of finding out what they're doing. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to do this.
Yeah. So let's see what Savage say on fitness. He's brought up O-line you back and that sort of thing. And obviously that's, whether they're back or not, I don't know. But I wanted to bring up this clip, and I posted it on Twitter as well, talking about the blocking. So in the first couple of weeks, right, like any green dog blitz is just a free rusher, it's like not complicated, right? Like green dogs are very common in the game of football, I think. And they're right up the middle, and it's just, they shouldn't be that easily. They shouldn't come free that often. And so there was a clip in the game. It was 3rd and 8. Notre Dame hadn't scored yet, and it was just kind of getting bottled up, And it's 3rd and 8, and they bring like a bunch of twists, And I just wanted to highlight here just how well the offensive line handles this, because it was a really huge play in the game, and it was really good from Pine, and I thought it was really good from everybody. So I just I'm going to play it, and then you can kind of talk about it, and we can go over it.
Yeah. This is the one where obviously he escapes and gets 12 yards. And like, first of all, I mean, it looks hilarious because he's doing the little spin here, whatever, into nothing, but it's like he read it completely right. And there's like a thing with the protection too, where you don't want to overcommit. You want to help, but you also don't want to overcommit, right? So Alt here, just fantastic, passing that off, right? And that was the problem. The first game is
so right here we're looking at Alt.
The first two games, Alt is stepping down with that.
Yeah.
And there has to be an understanding too that Carell and Patterson are going to be there. And look at all the things that Patterson does on this one play. It's like passing 7, the outside linebacker edge, like passing him all the way down to Carell, and then taking that blitz from depth, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot to handle there. And if he's not there, and obviously look at what he did, like just basically knocked this guy completely out of the picture, and actually almost knocked him into where Pine was originally scrambling.
Right.
But he does a fantastic job there. Like, and that doesn't happen if there isn't like an understanding of like what's possibly coming, what's, what everything that entails. Right. So,
and then Fisher and Lug too.
Yeah. Yeah. And this isn't actually, as CMAC points out too, this isn't a green dog because the green dog is when the backer has the back and then he activates as a blitzer because he sees he's a thing. So
no, what I meant when I referenced green dog, I meant simple blitzes.
Yeah.
Were missed. This is an example of something much more complicated. That's what I meant. Yeah, I'm not sitting there green dogging this.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So hopefully that clears that up for you, CMAC. But this specific blitz, this isn't a green dog, but green dog is something that like you should be that should be picked up by the back by a guy especially when they're rushing 3 and you got 5 in or 6 in, right? And that's what was going on early. And there you see that isn't like an easy pickup, that's something where Notre Dame was given pressure on those things before. And it looks like total chaos there too, but it really wasn't chaos by the way that they picked it up. And it was a really nice job. And that allowed, obviously Pine did a great job to get something out of that.
Right. And it illustrates too, like, sure, North Carolina, like not great defensively, but that is a play where a bad Notre Dame line, a bad Notre Dame team, they're giving up someone free there. Someone's coming free and someone's getting to the quarterback, right? And so you get a hat on a hat, a body on a body, and it gets figured out. And Pine is able to maneuver out of there. And, we always talk about like functional athleticism, right? And that's what that is from Pine. He on 3rd and 8, he's able to escape the rush, get outside, and then he's good enough to run for whatever it is, 15 yards or whatever it is. And in the drive continues, you go and score the touchdown, and then you're off. And so that like, to me, people are very conscious of, like, is this going to, like, can this carry over? And I think a play like that is one where that can carry over to other games against other teams who are more that type of play is going to be more prevalent from those other teams. And Notre Dame did a good job picking it up. So that's like a great example of Notre Dame improving on the offensive line in a number of ways.
Absolutely.
Question here from CFB Hertz. Jamie, a couple of times now you've called out the lack of havoc plays on defense this season. Is that an intentional trade-off to prevent big plays?
I think partially in terms of when you're talking about like not bringing not bringing extra rushers, maybe not doing as much movement up front. But that was more of the first 2 weeks. Like the last 2 weeks, the havoc rate has been up. 16.6% in this game, which it's not great, but it's good. It's fine. It's kind of what you want there. And really, if you think about it, is when it comes to like the turnovers, forced fumbles, interceptions are part of it, and Notre Dame's got none of those, right? So they don't have any of that. So it's all coming from like tackle for loss and sack numbers. And like, obviously this game too, specifically, it's not like they're going and trying to take chances more, but they ran a lot more stunts. Mm-hmm. They ran a lot more stunts and early down stunts too, and that's also like a product of who you're playing, because you're going to play, you're going to get certain tendencies from Carolina. So like first down, 1st and 10, they had Rubio and Chris Smith were in a defensive tackle, right? They get a stuff. Next play, Riley Mills, who was the end before, is now playing the 3 tech, right? And so you're dealing with different guys there. It's Riley Mills and Jason Adelola. And then it's like, so you basically have 2 3 tech types that are in there because you think it's going to be pass. And then they end up getting a sack on that 2nd and long, right? So, that's part of it, right? Is knowing the tendencies and all that too. But I definitely think like Notre Dame is calling more stuff to try to prevent some of those big plays for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of the big plays, so, the one they gave up. So I guess there were a few, right? The first play of the game, May hits the receiver on, he's scrambling out. He kind of throws it up to him. He makes a really good play.
I mean, that was a great catch.
It's a great catch, right? And it's not poor coverage. The Mickey play, again, that's also good coverage.
He's in phase. I thought he was going to pick it.
Yeah, he gets shoved like as he's jumping, which, like again, if a defender does it, it's 4 flags are coming out. But since the offense does it, it's like, okay, it's fine. The Clarence Lewis play is just getting run by. What do you think about? So I put this on Twitter too. So you have single high in man, and you have Watts at 12 yards, right? To me, it's 38-14. So, if you're going to play a running quarterback, maybe you want the safeties a little bit closer because they have to help out. But at 38-14, that's like not a concern. I feel like he's got to be at least 15, 17 yards.
It was also 1 in 15 on that play too.
Was it?
I think so.
Sure.
Or was it 3rd and medium?
No. It was. I think it was early in the thing. I'll go check. But either way, I feel like he needs to be deeper. And I don't want to. I don't want to bang on Watts.
I don't want to bang on Watts too much but I thought he was aligned a little tight. But I also think that the throw was so good that I was like, I don't know many safeties who are going to get out there at that point anyways. Like, so Lewis has to do a better job of sticking with it. Like, and so the thing is that like, so that Cam Hart, there was earlier, they took a shot with Cam Hart in a similar situation, right? Same guy too, Antoine Green, right? Mm-hmm. And Hart played it the exact same way. It was a little bit different. It's a little bit different technique, but but in terms of like, he was kind of like looking to see if they were going to throw a comeback and he could break on something. But then he was like, oh, he's going. So then he had to giddy up and run with him, right? And then he closed it, and you kind of showed like, oh, Cam Hart, like, don't get it twisted. This guy can run, right? Like, he can run, and he was there to kind of make that play. Where Lewis, he doesn't have that speed to close that gap. Yeah. He can't give that guy 6 inches, because if he gives that 6 inches, it's over, right? So, and as much as you might want to break on something earlier, and I always thought kind of like with Bracey, that was like kind of the story with Bracey earlier in his career too, is that he was like always looking to jump stuff. And then sometimes I think he got beat deep. It's not that he's not fast. It's just that he was like, and then he would lose something. And then once you lose that, it's hard to catch it up. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a great throw. I think it was a
It
great
is a great throw. My comment about the depth is, so when you're at 12 and
your angle's going to be different.
the angle's wrong, so like you're not over the top of it, right? You're chasing like kind of sideways, and if he gets by you and you're not there quick enough, then he's gonna be beyond, right? So if you're in single high, you always want to be on top of everything, and so you almost want to be coming down towards everything. You always want to get depth, and so I think if you're at 17, you're coming across the formation, and you're going to cut it off, right? Even if he catches it, like I don't expect him to get there. It's very difficult for him to do that, especially given the way it was. Like he snaps it, looks at him, and then turns and throws. Like it's a really good throw. He's probably not getting there in time unless he's just straight up guessing off the snap. But I just think, and again, I'm not blaming Watts because I don't know how he's supposed to play it. But it's like Notre Dame's done this before in the past, where it's like you play running quarterbacks and they're a lot closer to line of scrimmage, and it leaves you vulnerable to. We saw this against Florida State last year, where it's just like you're not taking away the deep post from that kind of depth. That's what I was thinking about. And then as far as, I guess let's just get to this question here because we can just segue into it. What are pros and cons of having a bye this week? What does Freeman need to do to not lose momentum on an off week?
I think the biggest thing is that they're not healthy. Like, especially in that secondary, like you mentioned, like, hopefully you get Henderson back for BYU. Hopefully you get DJ Brown back for BYU. I mean, those are crucial guys. You got to get them back. And obviously you're not going to get Bauman back, right? That's gone. And is Mitchell Evans going to be available too? Which maybe isn't as big of a concern because we just mentioned Stades and Raritan doing so well, but still, like I think Mitchell Evans is a guy gonna help you. And then also, I think Patterson has been not playing 100% healthy.
Yeah.
So just giving him more rest and some other guys just being banged up. Like I think that's the main pros. I think you could look at the cons and saying like you just played your best game of the season and now you're kind of taking a break off that. And I guess, you don't want to, in the losing the momentum part of it, you want to stay sharp, right? You want to stay sharp. I think it's always kind of tough to do, because you can kind of like lose stuff, but like, I think it's way more important to just like be healthy, look at what, look at what you're doing and work on. Like, I always find it's like a fundamental week, right? A bye week. It's like improve these like little things that you're going to do. And that's going to like take you kind of above and how you can kind of build on that momentum.
So pre-October bye, I don't like that, just generally speaking. Like throwing out everything else just in a vacuum, I think a bye pre-October is too soon. With Notre Dame, you have midterms that happen in October. So midterms week will probably be Stanford, I think, or the week after Stanford. And maybe that's not like the worst time ever, but still, I would just rather, have a game this week, have the game next week, and then do the bye after like the 8th or something. That's just preference.
Yeah.
Injuries, like you said, I think that's a big point, especially for Jarrett Patterson, who's still got the foot. Maybe he can, recover almost fully at that point. It gives them an opportunity to try to get Tobias going. Because the thing with Tobias is he needs to replace snaps that no one is getting right now. So it's not like he needs to get out there and replace X guy because X guy is not doing it. Like Braden Lenzy, I think, had 74 snaps last week. He doesn't need to be taking 74 snaps.
No,
like
he doesn't.
That's too many, and like he's not. They're not using him enough to where it's justifiable. You know what I mean? So like he doesn't need to be running around 74.
That sounds
snaps.
to me like they're using him because he knows what he's supposed to be doing on that play.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's why he's playing the most, because they're like he's the guy they have the most confidence in. Like, this guy knows the checks, he knows every play that he's supposed to run, he knows where he's supposed to go, and that's why we're using him. So it's kind of, I think that is one of the biggest things, is like getting a guy like Merriweather, Maybe seeing if like I'm kind of shocked Joe Wilkins hasn't really played.
It's got to
Like
be the foot, right? It
it's
has to
got to
be.
be something because he can help the team out.
Right.
He's not like he's not a nothing player. Like he can help the team out. Like even just to do like kind of what Jaden Thomas did in this game, he can do that kind of stuff, right? And I mean, nice to see Jaden Thomas kind of get in
Yeah.
and do some things. And I think
Yeah.
Jaden Thomas improvement as a blocker too. But yeah, like I guess so. A guy like there, or like a Colsey guy too, like who's been obviously non-existent. Like I think his injury, they kind of brushed off and said, "Oh, we'll see if he can be ready." Like spraining your patella is not like a see in a couple weeks. Like
Yeah.
so, I think maybe that's like something that maybe he might get into the next, or maybe he won't, but like he'll have at least a chance now, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of gives some of those guys. It also gives guys like Prince Colley just got a little bit of run in that game. Well, now can he build off it and get a lot more, right? Like guys like Gabe Rubio who played, you know, a little bit more in this game too. That's the kind of thing that I think is important. And yeah, you rest as much of your vets as you can, the guys who have played the most, and kind of build up the other guys as you can.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Patterson thing. I think it's super important. It's like because it's the biggest part of their team, right? Like the offensive line. I think, you know, everything else works if the running game is working, you know, and it all is kind of built off of that and the threat of that with the backs and everything. Again, with Tobias, it's just like you can get him 10 to 15 snaps a game. You can, you know, and I don't really see a reason why they shouldn't. And again, Lindsey at 74, it's not that I don't want him in the game, but you're going to get diminishing returns on him after a while, right? Like I don't think anyone
that's too many plays for a receiver. That's too many plays,
right? And so especially a receiver like him, who's not the biggest guy, where it's everything with him is dependent on getting vertical, and if he's slowed down a little bit, then that's going to cause him not to get vertical, right? Because he's tired. He's always out there. So that's one where it's like you have to find a way to cut down his snaps just for his own effectiveness, right? It's not that I don't want him out there. It's just like from an effectiveness standpoint, it's not the best usage of Lindsey as a football player. So I guess where do you how do I want to phrase this? Where do you see this team? So I think you mentioned before, like 1-3, you feel like this is going to be a bad season, right? And I don't know how you feel about it, but at 2-2 now, like I kind of expect, like if they haven't run the table up until Clemson, I do feel like it's a reset. Like I do feel like this game reset. Like okay, the games that Notre Dame should win, they should now win now. Like going into the season. If you know we looked at the games, it's like okay, these are the games you should win, and just kind of no question. Like I am back to that spot, which I wasn't obviously after Marshall, and not even after Cal, right? So seeing them do that has like it reset for me. Like, did it reset for you? Do you feel like now it's like okay, they really should not lose a game again until they get into the Clemson game?
Yeah, now I think it's not crazy to suggest they have a shot at winning out the rest of the way, right? Like, I mean, it's not to say they're going to do it, not to say they couldn't lose to Clemson, they couldn't lose to BYU, they couldn't lose to Syracuse, you know, like they couldn't lose to USC, but now they have a shot. They have a shot, right? And so and then you know, you're going to go to like probably a big bowl game if you do that. Like, you know, you finish 9-3, 10-2, you're going to go, you're Notre Dame, you're going to go to a pretty big bowl game. Guys get a chance. You have something to build off of. If they finish with 10 wins, whatever the record is at the end of the season, then you say, well, it's the X amount of year Notre Dame has won 10 games. Like that kind of stuff. Maybe it doesn't matter that much to players, but perception wise, it does matter. Right. So, I think it does change just the confidence of that you can go and do that. And I think like I mean, obviously, it can all flip if you lay an egg against BYU, but
Oh, yeah.
I just definitely think like if you're going in 1-3 to BYU, like I feel like everyone would be picking Notre Dame to lose that game and should. But
Yeah.
now you're like, I think Notre Dame, you would probably, if you're not picking them against BYU, you're definitely thinking that like this is going to be a good game, and I think Notre Dame has a really good chance of winning it.
So if Notre Dame goes 10-2, they're going to New Year's Six game. Because look, you beat Clemson, who's the top 5, and you beat
and you won 9 games in a row, or 10
you won
games
9 games in a row, and then you went to USC, who I can't imagine they've lost more than once, right? Just based on who they play, right? They're not playing like.
It does seem like USC is probably going to win the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 is bad. Yeah,
right. So it's like you go to USC and win, and now it's like you've beaten 2 top 10 teams, one on the road, and you haven't lost in what 2 months.
Yeah.
And you beat a ranked BYU team. Yeah, that would be, they're definitely going to a New Year's Six game at that point. Which is, I don't want to jump ahead too much. But I'm just,
they got to win all the other games.
Responding to the hypothetical.
Yeah.
Do you think we can win? So you think we can win all 8 games left? I don't know if this is like, if it's missing a do you think, or if he's surprised that I think they can win all 8. Here's the thing. Clemson is definitely a tough matchup, especially now that their offense is getting going. Like DJU looks a lot better. I think they lead Power 5 in like 20-plus yard completions. They have 16 already. So that's like
the receivers look way better than they did.
Yeah. So and the defensive line is a problem. I guess their defensive backs are a little bit shaky. But that's like not Notre Dame's strength either. So
yeah.
That's a tough matchup. I think here's the thing with USC. They played in their first 3 weeks. Okay, do you think? All right, I got it. So he's asking us if we think. Here's the thing with USC. They played the first 3 games. They played a bunch of teams that were the highest ranked SP plus defense they've played so far is 80th. Okay, yeah. They played one team defensively with a pulse, and that was Oregon State, who's 44th in SP plus, and they held them to 17 points. Okay, couldn't move the ball, right? So that's one thing with USC. Their offensive line is not very good. Okay, and so Notre Dame can get after them that way. Other thing is the USC is vulnerable against the run. USC is being saved right now by the fact that their turnover margin is like plus like 18 or something like that. It's like crazy. Like the amount of turnover luck that they've had over the first 4 weeks of the year is kind of unheard of. And so if that keeps up, then sure, but look, they're vulnerable against the run, and Notre Dame wants to run. The USC matchup is a much better matchup than Clemson is, that's for sure. So if Notre Dame gets,
for sure,
if Notre Dame gets by Clemson, I really think they've got something there, right? And I think that'll be a huge game. Hopefully, if Notre Dame, and look, Notre Dame will be favored to run the table going into that game. And it's just like it'll be a huge game. The stadium will be rocking. It'll be a night game. Hopefully it'll be a real big recruiting weekend, right? Hopefully they can hang in there with a bunch of guys, and they can close on Jeremiah Love and Tayshaun Lyons and that sort of thing. That's going to be a huge one. So that's kind of how I see it. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, they have to take it game by game. They're not good enough to kind of look ahead, not even close. I mean, that's how you end up losing to Marshall. That's part of the reason why you end up losing to Marshall. So I think that it's possible, right? Like I'd say probably if you're going to say likely, you'd say just chances are 8-4 is probably more likely, just because just you can't get too ahead and overreact to one game. We
haven't seen them play well against a good team yet.
Yes, or haven't seen them play like really well in back-to-back weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot going on. Like if they go and if they whoop BYU, then you could say, okay, I think this is whatever. But I think, there's some stuff on the schedule. Like, I think Stanford isn't good. They're not good. UNLV is better than expected, but they're still not. I mean, that's a game Notre Dame should win by a significant margin. At Syracuse is going to be a tough game. Like, that's going to be a tough game. Like, it's not going to be a walkover game, right? And they're deep because their defense is legit. Um, and Clemson, whatever. Like, Navy sucks. Boston College sucks, right?
Like
And
bad.
yes,
Oh,
they're horrible. They're horrible.
oh.
Yeah, they're one of the worst Power Five teams.
Woo! Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, and USC is, yeah, like you said. Let's talk about it in a month and see where they're at, right? So I think the schedule of who they play the rest of the way kind of sets up for them to run it, because if they play pretty well, they're going to win all those games. So it's just, but are they going to continue to play well? How are they going to stay healthy? Because there's obviously like, there's still like, receiver is still a problem. Like, they got it, whatever. And so just imagine you lose like a Lorenzo Styles or something like that. Like, I mean, that would be a huge,
That would be
lump.
bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Or if they lost like a Patterson up front like that, it would be big. Like, I mean, you saw it's a big difference not having him in the Ohio State game. Right. And so, yeah, they got to stay healthy, and all these kind of stuff matter. But I think, it's something that it could happen. It could happen. So it definitely, that game going 2-2 heading to the bye makes you feel just a lot better about the possibilities for the rest of the season.
Yeah. We love to compare this season to past seasons and, that sort of thing. To me, this is 2018. It is. You start the opener is against the Big Ten team. Obviously, Notre Dame won in 2018 against Michigan. Notre Dame lost this year against Ohio State. But then you lay an egg, like Notre Dame laid an egg against Ball State. Notre Dame laid an egg against Marshall. And then the Vanderbilt game against like the middling, like poor Power 5 team. Vanderbilt was similar to Cal, right? Vanderbilt had that fourth down play where if the kid catches it, they're going to go into the end zone and they're going to score a touchdown and win the game. Cal has the Hail Mary that everyone was scared about. Make the quarterback change, go on the road, play the ACC team with the bad defense and the good offense. Okay, Notre Dame blows out Wake Forest. Notre Dame blows out North Carolina. Okay, and I think BYU and Stanford, those the similar type teams, the 2018 Stanford version, the 2022 BYU version. Syracuse is pretty good, right? Just like in 2018. It's all coming together, Jamie. I feel it. It's the 2018 version of things. That team went undefeated, ran the table. I think it's in play, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's there. Maybe we're drinking a little too much Kool-Aid. Maybe I am. But you know what? I want to be in a good mood about this team because I was in a very bad mood 2 weeks ago about them, right? You wake up and you think about them and it's like, I don't feel good about this team. Now I feel a lot better about this team. So,
I mean,
go for it.
And this is why the BYU game is so important, because Notre Dame it's just a fact. Notre Dame has owned the ACC. The ACC is not a good conference. Because if you consider like, they're kind of like middle tier, upper tier teams are just, I mean, there's Clemson and there's everybody else in the ACC, and that's just kind of how it is. And also too, Notre Dame isn't playing Wake this year, right? So they didn't play Pitt last year when Kenny Pickett actually took off, right? So like, they've owned the ACC. And so it's pretty much they've only lost to Clemson since 2018. They've beat everybody else in the ACC. So you would just say like there's probably a good chance they're going to run the table against the ACC again. Stanford hasn't beaten them since 2018, and frankly, Stanford isn't any better. Navy is a declining program and not very good. As long as they prepare good for that game, they're going to beat Navy by multiple touchdowns. And And then like, USC, we'll see, right? But so yeah, I mean, they don't play the games on paper, but on paper, it does set up for them to do well. So
it sets up on paper. I'm happy. You know what? I'm not afraid of Keaton Slovis. I'm not afraid of him. Right? We've already beaten him twice, so we're good. I'm not afraid of that. All right. We're going to end it there. Jamie feels good on paper. We're going to end it there for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed or this is your first time, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We'll be back on Thursday talking about, I don't know, maybe we'll do like maybe a little more film review stuff. I can make some slides. It'll be a good time. We'll draw on some stuff. And then we'll be talking about that. We'll talk about the first quarter of the season, that sort of thing. And then we'll go from there. Jamie and Mike Frank have their Wednesday War Room tomorrow.
well, I'm
so
not going to be on that
out.
tomorrow night. That one is going to be Christian and Mike.
Christian and Mike.
Yeah.
Even better. Maybe they'll talk about recruiting. That sounds like
they're
maybe
going to talk
that's
about
what
recruiting. Yeah.
Talking recruiting tomorrow at around 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. They're going to be talking recruiting and so on. That you're going to want to check that out. We'll be back on Thursday, and you're going to want to check that out as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you on Thursday.